President Tinubu to address United Nations General Assembly for the first time, meets with world leaders to strengthen ties.
To get us to this point means that we are ready to go.
This will provide employment opportunities, never mind in revenue.
Nigerian midstream regulatory authorities to construct 500 metric tons of gas depot in Abuja. FCT High Court sentences a pharmacist to life imprisonment for raping a 3-year-old boy. Hello and welcome to the news. I am Olajide Bello. Many thanks for joining us. You can follow this news broadcast live on our website at nta.ng/live or on our other social media handles displayed on your screen for update. Now let's start with bilateral relations. President Bola Tinubu has been advancing Nigeria's readiness to strengthen economic ties with countries of the world ready for genuine business. The president projected these calls as he received some heads of state and businesses on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. State House correspondent Musbah Danwahab reports.
President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa was the first knocking on the door of President Bola Tinubu for bilateral talks. It was a meeting of the two African giants. In that way, the two leaders have agreed to project at the United Nations General Assembly. President Tinubu asserted that Africa must have a consensus that the hundreds of billions of dollars spent through international development finance institutions over the years must meet the specific needs of developing democracies in Africa. The Nigerian leader believed that Nigeria and South Africa have all the human and natural resources required and so can collaborate in a mutually beneficial way that enriches the two countries. President Tinubu said South African business community has done well in Nigeria and also believes that their mining industries have a role to play in the Nigerian solid minerals development. Referencing President Tinubu's quick implementation of what he called brave economic reforms, the South African president agreed that the two countries have much more wealth to create together in close and intentional partnership, with each nation leveraging on each other's respective strength. President Tinubu equally had bilateral discussions with the President of the Union of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, AU, Azali Assoumani, and Tinubu said the AU is strategically positioned to secure a common position for the continent on economic and socio-political relations with the world. He acknowledged there is nothing that can bring development and prosperity outside of embracing freedom and constitutional order, as that is a critical hallmark of sustainable development. The chairperson of the African Union, President Assoumani, noted that the Union seeks to complement Nigeria's efforts in securing peace and prosperity in Africa, rather than competing with it. The President of Comoros said his country seeks to learn from Nigeria's experience concerning the steady improvements in diversity management, electoral officiation, and economic growth over the years. President Bola Tinubu also received the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, Hussein Brahim Taha, where he reiterated that the Islamic world has a strategic role to play in the sustenance of peace and development in Africa and across the world. From New York, Musbah Danwahab, NTA News.
Now, there have been tons of world leaders addressing the General Assembly of the United Nations in New York, and President Bola Tinubu is scheduled to take his turn too. Let's join our State House correspondent Musbah Danwahab to bring us up to speed. Musbah, how is it coming through for Mr. President in New York?
All right, thank you very much in the studio. It's been a very busy schedule for President Bola Tinubu here in the United States of America. Before today, he's been having bilateral meetings, and it started with that yesterday with the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa coming to talk about bilateral relations with the President of Nigeria. And soon after that, the President of Comoros also came calling, and today we've heard meetings between the President of Nigeria and that of Algeria, Angola, and that of Jordan. So today, just a few minutes from now, in the next few hours, the President will be addressing the General Assembly for the first time since he became the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So we need to get an idea of what the President is presenting to the General Assembly, and I have the Presidential Advisor on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngalale, with me to talk to us. Thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome.
The President is attending the General Assembly for the first time and presenting a speech too. So can we have an idea of what he's presenting tonight?
His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is going to make a very strong case to the international community, to his foreign counterparts, and to the world that this is the era of Africa, that Africa is rising, that it has come of age, and that Africa must be represented at every meaningful global decision-making table. The President will be very clear as to what his vision is for the role of the Federal Republic of Nigeria within that context. He will make a strong case that across issues such as climate change and the reform of the global financial architecture, and other very pressing issues in the international conversation today, that Nigeria must be at the forefront of those conversations, not just as the largest economy in Africa, not just as the largest democracy in Africa, but also as the holder of Africa's largest population. The President will also make a strong case that in collaboration with the rest of the world, that Bretton Woods institutions, international development finance agencies and institutions must now more closely consult with their host and partner nations, particularly in the developing world, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. It's important now, according to Mr. President, that development finance institutions deal specifically with the targeted requirements and needs of those populations and countries that they're operating in, rather than providing prescriptions from very distant foreign capitals with an expectation that it will work out the way that it needs to. We are saying that should be reformed. Mr. President will make that case.
We believe he's going to make that case like he's done at other fora. And just yesterday he met with President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, and they both agreed that Africa should take its position in the world. Take this along with a brief evaluation of the bilateral meetings he's had.
Thank you so much. So it is true that in yesterday's bilateral meeting with the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, there was a lot of progress made in terms of consolidating on and cementing the relationship between the two largest economies in Africa, two of the major economies in Africa, and with particular reference to the aggressive promotion of a deepening of investment ties between the two countries. The President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, made a strong case that with Nigeria's abundance of solid mineral wealth that is presently untapped for the most part, that the expertise and history of South African mining industries, given their success in Nigerian telecommunications, that they can actually translate that over to Nigerian solid minerals development. And we believe that that's a win-win, mutually beneficial partnership that can be struck. Also, the President met with ExxonMobil, a major transnational oil and gas conglomerate, where we were able to strike a deal concerning a new phase one of a new investment push into Nigeria, which will bring expanded production of, in the short term, of about 50,000 new barrels per day from ExxonMobil alone. There are many other negotiations that are taking place.
Thank you so much, Presidential Advisor Ajuri Ngalale, for your time. All right, sure, Nigerians and of course the world cannot wait to listen to President Bola Tinubu as he takes the stage to address the world. And that's happening at 6 p.m. local time on schedule, and it's going to be around 11 p.m. Nigerian time. And you can be sure to get it live on NTA.
Many thanks, Musbah Dan Wahab, our State House correspondent. And to talk more on President Tinubu's participation at the UNGA summit in New York is Ambassador Bulus Lolo. Ambassador Lolo, you're welcome to NTA Network News.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Okay, Ambassador, it is President Tinubu's first UNGA outing. What should he be telling the world?
Well, I'm happy I listened to the snippet that was provided by Ajuri Ingilele there, the presidential spokesperson. Usually when a presidential spokesperson speaks, it means he has a preview of Mr. President's thoughts and what he'll be presenting. And the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly is the 78th time it means that the entire world will be meeting to discuss. And at each session of the United Nations General Assembly, as in this case, a theme would have been set out. For the 78th session, it centers around rebuilding trust and reigniting solidarity towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, for President Tinubu, there is significance in his being in New York. Number one, it is his first outing at that level and at that forum as Nigeria's president. And equally, it is the highest stage on the face of this earth where political leaders at his level meet. Now, in New York, there is a tradition that goes with each General Assembly. The next significant thing I want to add is the fact that he is speaking on the first day of the opening of the 78th session. In terms of attendance, in terms of attention, this is the high point of the 78th session. So for President Tinubu to be speaking today is a very good thing for Nigeria. Then let's deal with the content of what he will be telling the world. People seeing him for the first time would want to hear what message he is bringing to the global stage. And I'm happy that in the preview we've received, he'll be talking and addressing the issue of voice and representation. Africa needs to be represented. In 1945, when the UN was formed, most Africa was under colonial rule, and so it was a continent that was not represented. The foundation and establishment of the Bretton Woods institutions that he also talked about, the World Bank and the IMF, again, Nigeria was not party and Africa was not party. So voice and representation is important. But more importantly, I hope that the structure of the president's speech will cover the core element of our domestic situation. He used the word vision. The vision is renewed hope. Hope for every Nigerian, not a section of Nigeria. We have challenges in West Africa, which is our sub-region. And Nigeria is destined to lead this sub-region. But beyond the sub-region, we equally have Africa as a continent. And that Nigeria and Africa should be brought into decision-making at the global level. Here,
Ambassador, let me quickly cut in here. Nigeria has always been on the side of Africa. And the new Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Toga, recently said Nigeria and President Tinubu will pursue development, democracy, demography, and diaspora as its foreign policy. What is your take on that?
all of them are pretty good, but good if they deliver on the promise of development, democracy, demography, and diaspora. For development, let us develop our country for our own sake, not to please anyone out there, but for the sake of our own people, to give them that life, that hope, that security, that stability that everyone desires. On democracy, this more than anything is a weight that Nigeria must be able to lift and lift creditably, whereby the quality of our democracy is not in question, The depth of our democracy is not in question. The direction of our democracy is not in question, but one that provides a shining example for Africa and the world to commend. Then, on the issue of demography, we are growing, and it is projected by 2050, we perhaps may be the third most populous country on the face of this earth. Are we ready for it with our limited resources? And lastly, on the diaspora, that is a treasure trove of talent and resources begging to be tapped, because mention any field, we have the expertise, but that expertise is in the diaspora. We need to bring them home so that we can make use of what God has blessed the country with.
All right, Ambassador, just before I let you go, very quickly now, the President has already had bilateral engagements with some countries. What impact do you see this having on the country's priorities of security and economy?
I would say without any hesitation that hardly has there been a Nigerian president who has been in New York for the General Assembly that has not had a choked agenda, in the sense that bilateral engagements are part and parcel of the participation of the president in New York. But the key here is whatever is taken to New York would bear greatly if it has tangible result at home. I heard the session with President Cyril Ramaphosa, and I do hope that we will partner with South Africa to transform our solid mineral sector so as to maximally derive benefit from this trove that God has given to us.
All right, many thanks, Ambassador Bulus Lolo, for your input and for coming to NTA Network News.
Thank you very much.
You're watching the Network News. We'll pause for some messages now. The news continues shortly. Thanks for being there. And moving on now to humanitarian matters. The United Nations says it welcomes the federal government's position and coordinated approach to handling humanitarian crisis in Nigeria. This was emphasized by a UN delegation led by the Special Advisor to the United Nations Secretary General on Solutions to Internal Displacement, Robert Piper, during a visit to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu in Abuja. Ruth Aguele reports.
With millions of people displaced across the country as a result of humanitarian crisis, there has been concerted efforts by the federal government to curb this growing trend. This visit by a delegation of the United Nations to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation is to advance existing partnership and pledge the UN support on coordinated approaches towards proffering durable solutions in tackling humanitarian crisis and poverty reduction across the country.
We need to step away from temporal things to more durable solutions for people who are having humanitarian crisis, not just handing out everyday food. I think we've made those who are internally displaced more dependent than self-efficient. It's time to really settle them, move them completely out of camps, and ensure that they have livelihood, they're trained on ways to support themselves. We cannot, as a nation, continue to run the humanitarian response the way it's going.
According to the UN scribe, the mission in Nigeria is to follow the UN Secretary General's action agenda on internal displacement in areas of humanitarian needs.
Nigeria has a strong policy framework. You have governors who are developing plans. So it's a place for us globally where we can learn and where we can also develop our new approaches in support of the government.
For the ministry, there is no relenting in achieving the renewed mandate to ensure no one is left behind in the quest of lifting millions out of poverty. In Abuja, Ruth Aguele, NTA News.
And to boost the nation's economy, the government of the United States of America has enjoined Nigeria to achieve a stable naira, root out corruption, protect the integrity of Nigeria's financial system, and articulate a fiscal strategy that would release resources for investment into critical sectors of the Nigerian economy. These were identified as 4 economic reform priorities for Nigeria by the U.S. Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Wale Adeyemo, in an address delivered at the Lagos Business School.
Speaking on the 4 reform priorities, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Wale Adeyemo, said Nigeria needs a stable naira, noting that unifying Nigeria's foreign exchange rates will create microeconomic stability that is essential to attracting foreign investment. He further explained that creating economic opportunities will require government-driven efforts that addresses investors' fears by shining a light on corruption, holding people accountable, and taking meaningful steps to improve the business climate.
The government needs to articulate and implement a credible fiscal strategy that will provide the resources to make critical investments. I recognize the decision to end fuel subsidies is hard for many Nigerian households, but it was an important early step to create resources the government can use to invest in fiscal and digital infrastructure, education, and a strong small business environment.
Other speakers agreed that Wale Adeyemo's visit will further enhance trade between the United States and Nigeria.
Once we are confident that any gains that we make will be managed well, that there is integrity in the execution and in implementation of whatever gains come out of this reform.
There is some support to say that the right decisions have already been made to ensure that there is structural reform.
The Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury also affirms that President Joe Biden's administration is committed to a strong U.S.-Nigeria relationship that is built on shared values and mutual benefits. In Lagos, Lynn Lenake, NTA News.
Into the oil and gas sector, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, has approved the construction of 500 metric tons capacity gas depot in Abuja. The approval given to Noratec Energy Limited, the first of its kind, is part of activating the presidential initiative on harnessing gas as the nation's transition fuel. Lydia Sampson reports.
Private sector participation in deepening gas utilization is critical to actualizing the decade of gas. Key players are optimistic that this will receive a boost when the 500 metric tons gas depot comes on board.
So 2 things. This will enable not just the supply to improve in Abuja, because generally speaking, Nigeria's gas utilization per capita is far below what you have in even other African countries. Secondly, as you can imagine, this will provide employment opportunities, never mind in revenue.
We're working on a very aggressive agenda. To get us to this point means that we are ready to go. So we are putting all our stuff together. Hopefully within the first quarter of next year, we should be breaking ground and then we will move from there.
It is expected to add more gas to Abuja market, in addition to helping Nigeria fast-track gas utilization as its transition fuel. The permit is described as the first of its kind in Abuja. In Abuja, Lydia Sampson, NTA News.
And meanwhile, more than 70 management staff of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, including the Chief Corporate Communication Officer, have retired involuntarily. The Chief Corporate Communication Officer, Garbadin Mohammed, is gathered to have handed over to his subordinates at the corporate headquarters of the organization. The cadre of management staff retired starts from the rank of deputy managers. A similar event occurred 2 years ago, with many retiring voluntarily. This time around, it is compulsory once the affected have less than 15 months to statutory retirement. It also follows the recent promotion of 3 of its personnel to the position of vice president. The company made this known on its Twitter handle, ensuring effective organizational renewal to support the delivery of its strategic business objectives by rejuvenating the workforce. In the same vein, NNPC Limited on Sunday announced the appointments of 3 new executive vice presidents, as well as outlined their various designations. They are Orisetimaya Iyasan, who is now the new executive vice president upstream. Olalekan Ogunleye takes over as executive vice president gas, power and new energy, and Adedapo Segun, executive vice president downstream. And to Labour matters now, for the second time in 2 weeks, Minister of Labour and Employment Simon Lalong has interfaced with the leadership of the Trade Union Congress, TUC, to brief them on the efforts made by federal government to address their grievances. The minister appealed to TUC to exercise more patience, explaining that before the president left for UNGA in New York, he was fully briefed and gave further directives on implementation of issues put before him, particularly when he personally met with the Labour leaders. On his part, TUC President Cameron Festus Asifo sued for more action than promises because workers are getting more impatient due to hardship occasioned by the removal of subsidy. Asifo, however, said TUC is hoping that between the next 2 weeks, the president would have done everything possible to arrive at a conclusion which the workers are eager to hear in order to douse the tension and threat for withdrawal of services by workers. And to the judiciary, the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory sitting in Kubwa, Abuja, presided over by Justice Akambi Yusuf, convicted and sentenced a public officer in Nigeria, Abubakar Mustafa, to life imprisonment for rape under Section 1 of the VAP Act of 2015. In a statement, press officer of National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, Adekoye Vincent, indicates that the convict, Abubakar Mustafa, was a former chief pharmacist of National Hospital Abuja and senior special technical advisor to the director of the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development. He was arrested in March 2020 for defiling a minor, named withheld, his neighbor in Abuja, and was charged to court. Reacting to the judgment, the Director General of NAPTIP, Professor Fatima Waziri, hailed the judiciary for its doggedness in ensuring that justice is served under the VAP Act. The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has filed an appeal praying the Supreme Court to nullify the judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Court that upheld the return and declaration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the duly elected President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Atiku Abubakar, as the appellant in his notice of appeal predicated on 35 grounds, insisted that the trial court, in the unanimous judgment, allegedly committed grave error and miscarriage of justice in its findings and conclusion in the petition challenging the declaration of Tinubu as president by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The appellant is praying the Supreme Court to set aside the whole findings and conclusions of the Court of Appeal on the alleged grounds that they did not represent the true picture of the grounds of his petition. And in another development, the candidate of the Labour Party during the February 25, 2023 presidential election, Peter Obi, has filed his appeal before the Supreme Court of Nigeria against the verdict of the Presidential Election Petition Court. Peter Obi, in his 51 grounds of appeal, alleged that the verdict of the court below was against the weight of evidence provided in the petition. In the light of this, Peter Obi, as an appellant, is praying the Apex Court to set aside the verdict of the court below and allow his appeal. The Presidential Election Petition Court, in its verdict delivered on 6 September 2023, dismissed Atiku Abubakar's petition for lacking in merit. And since the creation of de-radicalization, the Presidential Amnesty Program under the stewardship of Major General Barry Tariye has surpassed previous records with commitment to raise the bar beyond expectations as he marked 1 year in office as interim administrator. Abubakar Akwanga reports.
September 2022 would be remembered in the history of the Niger Delta region as a man with military background assumed office as interim administrator of the Presidential Amnesty Program, introducing life-changing reforms.
Immediately I resumed was to set up an audit to ascertain the total number, including capturing biodata of all the beneficiaries of the Amnesty Scholarship Scheme, the total number of students and where they are in each of the universities, the actual cost of the scholarship program, and you will not believe the reduction in the number and the savings to the Amnesty Program.
Now, 100 days into a purposeful era, the gains are laid bare, with impact across the agri-sector, education, social empowerment, cooperative development, and positive engagement of ex-agitators through fruitful dialogues.
If you look at the Niger Delta Recovery Plan, there are 4 members of a developmental matrix. Because of the success rate of the plan, everybody out there expects us to play the role of these 4 legs. It's a misconception. To dream, you must have a leader who is willing to give wings to your dreams.
The program has also helped to develop the enterprising spirit amongst ex-agitators and foster collaboration between security agencies to ensure seamless implementation of all its social net programs and protection of oil assets.
Businesses. The first set of that disbursement is already ongoing. Over 400 ex-agitators are already being supported with microfunding. This is the vision of the interim administrator, Major General Barry Tarim Jimo.
He has made a single BVM direct payment system for them. I think we now have some bit of peace.
The agency has done much within the duration of 365 days under its interim administrator and hope to match more words with actions as it roll out programs that will inspire human capital development and encourage the success of the renewed hope agenda in the Niger Delta region. Abubakar Akwanga, NTA News.
As part of efforts to ensure more processes of bringing succor to the people, Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State has inaugurated over 2 billion naira rural link road project. Awal Abdullahi reports that the project is to be supervised by the Rural Assets and Agricultural Marketing Project. The report.
It is a 19-kilometer road project linking Liman, Katagun, Ludaleka communities out of over 1,000-kilometer length to be constructed in rural communities. Besides having smooth access road, the project will help in boosting agriculture and other socio-economic activities in the area.
We are doing things by justice and equity. We will make sure that this project is equitably distributed between the geopolitical zones of the state. Invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am further delighted to note that the project has selected the 19-kilometer Liman Katagun Luda Road to showcase the concept while other roads are being prepared across the state for various types of intervention.
The intervention program is aimed at providing access to basic social amenities, enhancing food production and addressing infrastructural gap in the rural areas across the state. In Bauchi, Awal Abdullahi, NTA News.
We take another break now. The news continues shortly. Many thanks for being there. Now let's head straight back to New York. And the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has said girls must be encouraged to have positive dreams and pursue them with vigor. She was speaking in New York while receiving Ms. Zuriel Oduwole, founder of the Dususu Foundation, with focus on girl child advocacy, peace mediation and climate. Senator Oluremi Tinubu explained that education remains pivotal to the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and she will join forces to ensure that the girl child in Nigeria gets a good life. Having that education gave her the opportunity to be who she has become today. While encouraging girls to keep their dreams alive, she urged the founder to please come to Nigeria and show the girls that there is a better way of life they can emulate. On her part, Zuriel Oduwole was of the opinion that the best way to impact the girl child is to show and not tell. Zuriel Oduwole is known for her developmental work across the globe, advocating for girls' education, advocating against girl-child marriages and peace mediation. And back home, adopting new ideas towards ensuring financial integrity and transparency in governance is the resolve of professionals in the accounting profession as they contribute to economic development. This was at the 2023 Annual National Conference of the Association of Accountants of Nigeria in Abuja. Bosadebo reports.
Nigeria, like many countries of the world, is faced with challenges ranging from debt crisis, high cost of living, and to an extent, security challenges. This professional accountants here say is surmountable considering the huge potential available.
The accounting ecosystem is expanding to encompass new frontiers. And as we members of ANAM, it is our responsibility to navigate this landscape with competence, integrity, and resilience.
In relation to the profession, they believe certain steps are needed to meet contemporary challenges that come with the digital era.
We are the custodians of financial data and are committed to confidentiality, and ethical decision is not negotiable.
To be cautious of the fluidity of its operating environment and the consequent imperative of being readily adaptable to the changes imposed by new processes, products, and markets.
Is when you engender transparency in what you do, that credibility and accountability will flow.
Your commitment has entrenched good accounting practices, both with public and private sectors.
To ensure that blockchain-based systems are trustworthy and reliable, standardization and regulation are essential. Again, this is where the human element comes in.
To this end, members of the body believe as they embark on this journey collectively, their aspirations are not far from realization. In Abuja, Bosede Ebo, NTA News.
And over now to Benny Adams for the business segment of the news. Benny.
Thank you, Olajide, and welcome to business. Study overseas without traveling and reduce pressure on foreign exchange is an idea transnational education experts are contributing to ongoing reforms in the nation's education sector. This is as the federal government commits to improving budget for education by 25%.
Could pick about 6 universities within the 6 geopolitical zone and transform these universities into international university and forming partnership with countries like in the UK, for example. There are universities in the UK that will be willing, even in Australia, universities in Australia that will be willing to form such partnership to enhance our local education delivery and improve the opportunities for people coming also to study within Nigeria. I believe it's going to be a new thing for we to think that there could be a business out of education. And this is a new area the government needs to actually look into, education as an export, as an exportable service.
And experts in procurement and supply management are of the view that the Public Procurement Act of 2007 holds the key to the present administration's reserve of accountability in government spending.
And the Public Procurement Act is a public document that is to guide our conduct as government with regards to contract administration and contracting as a whole. By so doing, Nigeria is a country that is developing, and most of her requirements are sourced through third party, and their representative are usually through the ministry, department, and agencies that are respectively having such contracts to be awarded. They go through and establish protocols, which are the rules and regulation, and they are to be managed by the Bureau as the custodian of practice activities with regards to be a gate man to government, ensuring that the right things are done, ensuring compliance.
There are a lot of sanctions, 5 years, 10 years, without fine. If you go into this problem of procurement violation. No.
Its Nigerian equities close in positive territory as investors gain 263 billion naira. At the end of today's trading session on the exchange, a total of 676.7 million shares and 7,659 deals, corresponding to a market value of 5.893 billion naira, were traded. Compared with the previous trading day, today's data shows 31% improvement in volume, 34% decline in turnover, an 8% decline in deals. The current market capitalization is 37.4 trillion naira. Universal Insurance Company recorded the highest volume of 235 million traded shares, followed by United Bank for Africa and Transcorp Nigeria. That is business news. Network News continues with Olajide.
Many thanks, Benny. And moving on. Nigeria's National Park Service, vigor to end wildlife crime and insecurity, is renewed with concurrence of the National Assembly to the formal proclamation of additional 7 national parks and elevation of some officers by the service. Charles Alpha reports.
The concurrence of the National Assembly to 7 of those approved by the former president is now a game changer for the National Park Service, desperately in need of more grounds to fully harness the resources that abound nationwide.
With this development, the new parks will soon become operational and will expand the scope of the service.
In another development, the National Park Service has elevated more officers as conservators of parks in an effort to deal with incessant attacks on rangers and wildlife. Those as chief park rangers have been elevated to the inspectorate cadre, while others to officers cadre.
This level comes with responsibility, and I know with that responsibility it means higher commitment.
At least this is a big plus to all the effort one has put over the years.
Park service currently is going through a lot of challenge. People invading the park for different reasons, banditry, kidnapping, mining. So with this promotion, it is a call to them to be more dedicated.
Career progression and capacity development of the officers, the service said, is strategic to the realization of its mandate, but would require the officers' dedication and highest professional standard to deal with the threats facing its parks. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Another break beckons. The news returns shortly. Many thanks for being there. And up next is Sports Update with Olumide Gutola.
For the commencement of the 7th National Youth Games as the Stephen Keshi Stadium, Asaba, and other facilities for the game are in good shape. More than half of the contingent across states of the Federation expected at the games have arrived with eyes fixed on the star prize. Security and other logistics for the games slated for Wednesday have been put in place from the continental scene. Reigning Nigerian Premier League champions Enyimba International stands the chance of winning $2.8 million if successful in the inaugural edition of the African Football League. The team must overcome the challenge of Wydad Casablanca of Morocco, among others. From the UEFA Champions League, it's match day 1 of the 2023-2024 season, with matches slated for Tuesday and Wednesday night. On Wednesday, it will be Bayern Munich against Manchester United. Arsenal will lock arms with PSV Eindhoven, while Real Madrid takes on Union Berlin, among other matches. In golf, stakeholders in the game have described iconic golfer Edwin Osuo as a world mentor who introduced the sport to many young Nigerians with the aim of developing the game. Some notable golfers converge on the Ibori Golf and Country Club, Asaba, Delta State, to celebrate the professional golfer they described as a rare gem, still playing golf at the age of 70.
Golf consolidated.
I wish he would keep playing golf because golf has made him so strong.
He will say 90, he will say 100, but with a proviso.
The golf course is the cleanest place in any town. You lose nothing. You are healthy, you breathe good air.
I pray for him to live long so he can enjoy all the fruits of his labor.
With Sports Update, Olumide Gutola, NTA News.
And that's it on the network news. Many thanks for being a part of it. I am Olajide Bello.